Hello everyone, and welcome to Wednesday World Video, a video series where I talk about ways to add flavor and lore to your world. Today's episode is about ways to introduce racial specific qualities to weapons and armor. Now in my world, and in tonight's video, we'll be talking about dwarves and elves. In my game, there is dwarven battle axe and a dwarven warhammer, which are made by master craftsmen, which grant the ability to critical hit on a 19 or 20. They're not magical, but they're a step above normal weapons, and it gives a little bit of flavor to represent the master craftsmanship of dwarves. I then have special materials made for that the dwarves use that they've mined mithril, which adds distinct bonuses to either weapon, with the battle axe being, even if you miss, unless you roll a natural 1, you'll still deal 1 point of damage. And the warhammer, when you hit, you add your proficiency bonus as additional damage to the hit. And then I have what I call the ancient dwarven battle axe or dwarven warhammer of mithril, which comes from an older time, which is such a finely crafted item and such a well-known item that you get advantage on charisma checks when dealing with dwarves. Now, this is to represent master craftsmen of ages past, but the work is so finely known and widely respected that you draw respect from dwarves when they see you with this stuff. Of course, this could also lead to issues where dwarves asking where you got such renowned weapons or craftsmanship. I also, of course, have dwarven plate mail, which is, again, finely crafted plate mail made by the dwarves. And then, of course, I have a mithril version of that. Just a way to represent the uniqueness of certain races and their advantages they have on some of their weapons without having to add magical weapons to your world. I happen to run a very low magic game, but I'm still be able to give out a bonus to my players without putting magical stuff into the world. But it represents the finely craftsmanship that you always hear about, how the dwarves are known for their master craftsmanship. I also do the same thing for elves with elven longbows and elven long swords. The longbow, you do not get disadvantage when firing the bow because it's so finely crafted and perfectly balanced. And the long swords also present a bonus. I also have elven chain shirts and elven chain mail representing their work they have done with metals to make such lightweight armor for themselves as to not impede themselves while traveling through the woods or the forest. All stuff that you've heard, even some of this stuff like dwarven armor in the DM's guide is considered a magical item. I've changed up the what the abilities are in my world, which I also like to do. Even though I do run a game or games mostly for newer players, but when you come across people who know the DM's guide and know all the magic items, which will happen, it's nice to introduce a change to something so it's still fresh to them also. Like back when they first played and they got a first suit of dwarven plate mail, they didn't know what it did, and it was all exciting to find out what it was. Now the person just memorized the DM's guide and knows what dwarven plate mail is, but when he gets dwarven plate in my world, it's not what he expects, and it's something different. And again, it leads that something new, that wonderment that you had when you first discovered your first magic item years ago playing Dungeons and Dragons. There's also in my world another metal called star metal. Meteorite had struck one of my moons, destroying one of the moons of my world. I'll get into that into a future video. But fragments of the meteorite have fallen to the earth, and dwarves have made weapons out of this, as well as armor, as well as some humans have made metal out of this. Now, for weapons, what this does is it's such a heavy steel that whenever it touches a non-living creature, it becomes a critical hit. So it's great for breaking down doors, fighting trees. It's great for chopping down trees. Would not work on a treant because they are living. It's specifically non-living creatures. But again, it's additional bonus. And then for the armor, when you have armor made out of this, which can only be used to make heavy or medium armor, and there's strength requirements because it's such a heavy armor, it will cause all non-magical attacks to become non-critical. So a normal weapon would not crit you because to represent the unique material that this is made from. These are just a few basic ideas that I use in my world. I hope to give people ideas for what to do and ways to introduce new stuff into their world, adding a little bit of flavor to their world. You want to go even further, you introduce an ancient dwarven battle axe, go ahead, put some lore behind it. Say it was created by the famous dwarven master crafter Cranar Blackaxe in the year 32, and it was handed down through his family through 3 generations before it was lost in battle to a red dragon, and your group has fought a red dragon, and they found the axe in the dragon's hoard. Put a little history into your items, especially if you want to do something like this with a master craftsman. Just adds a little bit more flavor to the weapon, gives it a little bit more life, and you've now dropped a name into your game, which you can bring up at a later time. Or maybe your players might want to do some research and find out more about this, and there goes a trip to the library. It just opens up new doors and new ways to introduce stuff to your world and make your world feel real, and you can tie things together. Like when you see a Picasso, you can look up who Picasso is in the real world, so you can use the same ideas in your game world, depending how much detail you want to put into it. But it's an interesting way, and I've used it over the years. Sometimes my players are like, yeah, that's cool. Sometimes my players want to know more about this master craftsman, which I then have to go research, and I'll tell them, well, you need to go do research, and I can put it off for a night or two of adventuring while I make up a background history. But be as detailed as you want. Be as in-depth as you want. Some of your players will love it. Some of your players won't give it a second thought. But you have this. Keep your notes. You start a new campaign a couple years later or with a new group of friends. You have this there. You have these names. You have these characters. Always keep your notes. Always keep important characters. I've ran the same world since 1989, and as my campaigns happen, I move them forward in years. And the players of the previous campaign are now heroes whose names are in history, and I can drop them. And if the players want to read the small notes I give in the beginning, like the main points of the timeline, the names are there. Like, oh, I know that name. Just some interesting ideas. The next video I'll do in this series, I'll be talking about unique weapons created by different races that I've introduced into my world. Thank you for listening. I hope everybody has a great night. Be good people and have great games. Thank you.